anyone driving around the city of Nairobi, you will not fail to recognize that there is significant growth in terms of infrastructure expansion, from railway network to highways and byways. This has been achieved in a span of about 10 years or so, because a visitor to this city before then, you all knew that this city's transport network was in chaos. And this has been a concerted effort of different government institutions like Kenya, Kura, and even Nairobi Area Metropolitan Authority. Joining us tonight on Inside Government is NaMATA Director General Acting, as well as Infrastructure Secretary, Engineer Francis Getao. Thank you so very much indeed.
Thank you
for joining us. I mean, from railway networks, that is being revamped to, the construction of Nairobi expressways, among other highways. Which project would you say will give Nairobi a different feel, a different look in the next 5 years?
Thank you very much, O'Brien, for inviting me to this forum. This is a very important forum because it is the information platform for the people of Kenya on matters mobility, not only within the city but in our country. Yeah. In the Nairobi space, we can look at the mix you have mentioned, the commuter rail service, the expressway, and the BRT corridors that are being developed one by one, and as you well know, there are 5. So the first one being Mombasa Road, where the expressway is taking shape. It is clear that the government is very committed to ensure that the bus rapid transit corridor, which is an equity and equality, piece of infrastructure that brings about the fair share of transport infrastructure between different modes of transport. That includes the commuter traffic and the motorized traffic. All this is a menu, it's like a balanced diet. Mm-hmm. So you'll find what commuter rail service will offer Kenyans is an access to over 60% of the people within the metropolitan area, because that particular number happens to be about 3 kilometers from a commuter rail network. However, as you well know, the commuter rail is the infrastructure that initially was developed as cargo-oriented development. It meant it did not have a linkage with residential areas and workplaces and schools, and therefore, to complement this service, then the bus rapid transit comes in to offer the first mile, rapid connectivity, the last mile, and the distribution of commuters within the urban environment, mm-hmm. so that it is an effective combined menu of a solution for the city, whereas the expressway is giving the through traffic from Mombasa and from the southern region to the northern region of Kenya a clear, quick and fast system to evacuate them from the capital, from the urban core. So that really will bring around some kind of a breathing space to the economic and social environment within the city. It will also have very positive health implications because of things like air quality will improve, emissions will decrease, congestion will be a thing of the past. And as we continue investing in this infrastructure, we know that since infrastructure takes time to realize, people are hungry for information. And I know we are crafting good communication plans that will be able to come to the citizens, so that there are fewer questions and more answers with the kind of impacts that we expect to see in this infrastructure.
And you have enumerated, some of the projects that are underway, from the expressway to the railway network to BRT. And I know that, the one along Thika Road, that will be line what?
It's line 2 sides, called the Simba.
The Simba line,
yes.
From Clayworks?
Yes, it's coming from Clayworks all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital.
I know, a lot of work is now being done around there. But still, I would want to pose this question to you. Which project do you believe will have a significant impact in the way transport business is handled in this city in the next 5 years?
When you look at the investment portfolio for the transport business in Kenya, it's basically private sector. Kenya Railways is basically a government institution that has provided also reliable transport in the past, and therefore the new baby around the block is the BRT. The BRT will be a service that runs on a quality indices that is a metric that can be monitored with key performance indices that can actually guarantee a service quality that will be like an offering to the people of Kenya. So that when somebody tells you, I'm weighing half a kilo of meat for you, then it is the same with the transport service, with indices and with the criteria for performance and monitoring, that they will bring a professional angle to the way public transportation is handled in this country. And then carrying together with us, we are having the private sector. We've been engaging them through a task force. Of course, the period is expired, but we have learned a lot from the engagement. And we have that private sector that is willing and ready to get into the mix and become partners with government in providing public service. And that is a great transformation.
You know, I was going through the National Urban Road Transport Improvement Project by the World Bank and the Government of Kenya. And, you know, it was giving some very interesting statistics that, you know, about 55% of Nairobians, you know, they walk to work or walk back home, whereas, you know, the matatu industry, you know, carries about 33 to 35%, you know, of the city's population. The rest is private vehicles and the railway network. Once all these projects comes into fruition, how do we expect these metrics to change?
Oh, I think that's quite professional for you, that you're thinking about the modal split within the mobility and the consumption of trips within the urban environment. And I think the change that we want to see is a decrease in the motorized traffic. Of course, that will be a process. It will depend on how fast we create this infrastructure and provide service. And again, the attraction to the new services, because we must give Kenyans a better mode of transport. What is bringing in the space is modal choice. So if you are individual motorized and you still want to use your vehicle, you will still be able to use it, but again at a price. If you choose to use a good, high-quality public transport service, then you are one of our greatest customers, and we want you to come and transform your mobility choice to public transportation. If we offer a good quality public transport system, we want to see the motorized, individual motorized, decrease below 5%. Current is about 10, going to 13. Walking commuters, walking public is about 47%. 47. And when you look at the matatu paratransit, they take about 14%. But in combination, everybody in Nairobi is walking, because the last mile aspect of mobility is still not properly serviced. So you'll find you'll park your vehicle in community area and walk through Uhuru Park. You may park a vehicle in the city and walk to Kenyatta National Hospital. So this walking public and this paratransit, the use of the matatus and the buses, you'll find most of these people will be attracted to the public transport service. The challenge to government is, how do we actually provide for this huge demand stream? It is going to be a process. So we'll start small, but we'll eventually grow to be a premium service for the people of the metropolitan area.
I mean, Engineer Francis, I know, you know, you have traveled different parts of this world, and you have seen how important, you know, transport system is, you know, to a country. And when we're talking about, you know, a proper and a functional system, you know, transport system is a system that moves people, you know, from point A to point B with the least cost and with the utmost comfort, if I'm allowed to say so. In terms of all this project that you are coming up with, how have you ensured that this is factored in and it's catered for?
Some of the best metrics of the kind of a public transportation system we want to see is a reliable service, meaning it's a scheduled service. Mr. O'Brien will get out of his studio and know he can take the 8 o'clock bus and it will not be late, and it will take him to his destination. The question of comfort may not be a major parameter, but it must also be there. Sometimes buses get a little congested. But again, the greatest breakthrough for this metropolitan area is an affordable transport and safe transport. On matters of safe transport, we are demarcating bus rapid transit corridors, specially and specific for buses. That means we expect almost zero collisions. Number two, the bus specifications that we have actually developed in NaMATA and shared with the local manufacturers, and still it's a question of debate because we are also looking at some of the standards we are bringing in, like having a stainless steel cage for the chassis and a low floor chassis, and universal access to include even people with disability, and low floor stations that are, we have level boarding for buses and all that. The safety aspect of the buses we are specifying will be a new offering in the market. And that is a transformation that will change the desirability to actually use the public transport service.
In terms of the length of this system, the BRT system, you plan, after everything is done and is put in place, we expect to see how many kilometers or how many miles of BRT?
It will now be in excess of 200 kilometers. Of course, initially, because we have stretched, like when we're talking like BRT Corridor 1, initially we were going all the way to Mororongo. Now we are stretching it all the way to Machakos. If you think about Line 3, which was going to the showground, we are stretching it to Gong. So, because we are servicing the neighboring counties, it may, in some instances, then have to travel in mixed traffic. But that is where the travel patterns and the density in terms of the travel, the vehicle demand in terms of volumes allow. So it will be quite a huge system. It will be a huge system.
I mean, Nairobi was beaten by Dar es Salaam, when it came to the establishment of a BRT system. But as we say, from where I come from, starting fast does not mean that you end fast as well. Paint to us a picture of how transport system will change in this city using the BRT system for somebody who is being dropped in, or who is coming from, let's say, Machakos and working or works in Upper Hill. How would they be able to be transported or to move from Machakos to Nairobi's Upper Hill area with ease?
O'Brien, it's not good to compare yourself with somebody else. It's always good to compare yourself with your yesterday. The best.
But it's not harm, in looking at your neighbors and seeing what they are doing.
The best comparator is the self. And Kenya, fortunately, has that determination to develop a transport system that suits its people without comparing. We've gone to many places. We have seen South Africa, we've seen Bogota. Some of us studied in Europe, so we have seen German transport. We've seen all this, but the winning point here will be what will suit our people. And starting with the Nairobi Metropolitan Area, we must then set a standard that actually is not necessarily in its expense, but more in terms of its optimized investment, meeting the current demand, and being able to be scalable and sustainable in the future to meet future demand. And we are doing that, and we are not late, because we were never supposed to start together. So now that we have started, we must be very committed to stay the course and be able to look at our environment and invest and link our resource plans to our implementation plans, so that we are pragmatic and we are not straining the economy, but we are addressing the demand stream that creates impact and brings effectiveness in the utilization of public resources. Now, going to Machakos. When you look at a Machakos commuter, then this is a candidate for BRT Line 1. If you check the expressway, it's one piece of infrastructure that is racing ahead of its time. You can see it is moving. There's some drilling and some the columns we are doing at kilometer 24, that is the church, and near Chiromo Road there. There are a lot of work happening in the capital, what do you call it, the capital, there at Bellevue.
Capital Center.
Capital Center. And therefore, from Machakos, you'll be easily move into BRT line 1, and maybe if you have a vehicle, you may be able to park your vehicle around Syokimau, where we may have a park and ride service. You will get into the parking, pay for your parking, get your ticket, use the same ticket to ride BRT line 1, and you'll be brought all the way to Haile Selassie roundabout, where you'll meet a transfer station, and you will be able to transfer to corridor line 3 that will be heading towards Kenyatta. And behind the National Library,
and line 3 is the one that comes from Clayworks to Kenyatta National Hospital?
No, there is what we call multiple use of Haile Selassie and Kenyatta Hospital by different BRT lines. Because this is a high
that is likely to be the convergence center.
That will be the convergence center. And that's why when you hear ideas like the Railway City, you're excited, because there, then again, we'll develop a huge transfer station so that you can move from one service to the other. If we achieve what we want, the same ticket will ride BRT line 1 and ride BRT line 3, maybe within a space of an hour, and you don't have to double pay. Then you'll use the same ticket, riding back to Syokimau, get into your vehicle with the same ticket, and meaning it's a multiple use payment system. And we want to see an automatic fare correction system that does not only talk BRT, it integrates commuter rail service, BRT, and we want to hail the work that is being done by the Nairobi Metropolitan Services.
I mean, when you are describing, this system, I mean, it takes you to, let's say, the London tubes. The Beijing Metropolitan, the Beijing railway transport system.
Absolutely.
Which is absolutely very, very efficient and clean and transport millions of people on a daily basis. And the question that comes into mind is, I mean, as a country, we do not have a shortage of planners, but we always have a serious shortage of implementers. When can we say that eventually we are going to have all these systems in place, and what you are describing here will be livable?
Oh, that's quite a challenge, because now, when it comes to Transport for London, and you're talking about tubes in London, these are developments that have taken hundreds of years to implement. Like the metro in London is 150 years old. The Eurotunnel, designed in 1889, done 100 years later. Planning and implementation must move hand in hand. But the planning and implementation cycle, they are all dependent on resource plans. And it's always good to plan and be prepared, because the project preparation process is a preparatory process. But the Olympics come with a scheduled time plan. And therefore, this implementation is heavily dependent on the capital investment that we expect to see, not only from the government, but the private parties. There are people who are greatly interested in seeing efficiency around the economy in the cities. World Bank is one of the great partners we have.
Yep.
They have recently released a technical note, a diagnostic about the areas that we require to strengthen for the urban mobility, and we are working. So this is, and will remain, work in progress. To put a date on the entire system development would not be easy, because it takes many years. But for this generation and in the short term, the thrust is to develop Corridor 2, because we have adequate infrastructure in the form of thick road. We have the government willingness to finance that, and we are doing a pilot that is not more than 28 kilometers, where we shall be able to calibrate the instruments of transaction in this particular area. And one instrument of transaction that has not been there in the space is a transport service contract. Imagine negotiating a service quality with a bus operator, so that you're discussing the scheduling and the headways and the rolling stock and the standard of the bus and the reliability and the comfort and all those indices with a bus operating company. It will be a first in Kenya. The second will be an automatic fare correction, where you do not have to pay cash. Maybe the cash will still be an option, but it's a correction, a fare correction with a clearing house, where even if you are in a matatu or a taxi, you can sit home and actually get somebody manage your money And that clearinghouse actually is able to pay you at the right time with a contract. The other issue is that we will actually see the development of safe stations day and night. It's just not about the day. And this may eventually support the 24-hour economy. Can you imagine also a facility like Kasarani, with the kind of traffic jams we experience on Thika Road, being able to hold international events and evacuate 60,000 people like a raindrop, so that there is actually absolutely no congestion or there's no inconvenience of travel for people who want to enjoy themselves. Imagine if you're coming from Rangata, being able to go to do your jogging in Kasarani, just because you can. And now the problem is that you can't. And that will create the difference, the quality of life. Remember the number of people who will be employed in stations, in security, in cleaning, in quality long-term jobs. It's no longer the way you work for today in a matatu and tomorrow you're not there. It's a quality job with a career progression path guaranteed for life, something that can make any aspiring transportation enthusiast actually aspire to be part of the transportation system.
I know, you know, the Thika line, the Thika Road line, or the Simba line, you know, it's going to be like the benchmark of how, you know, the BRT system is going to be developed in this country. I know the government is investing 5.6 billion shillings, or thereabout. When do we expect to have this line, you know, complete and put into use, and what do we expect to see along that line?
In fact, in another interview, we committed ourselves that we shall see something happening in June. So
June next year.
June next year. So
we're talking about 8 months from now.
We had actually believed the pilot section for the infrastructure construction, for the retrofitting of the pedestrian bridges and the separation of the dedicated lane and the stations, depots, and a park and ride service. Those should be complete by June. But then, before stream, that means before we get there, then before December, getting to January, we must start now negotiating a transport service contract based on the service plan that we are designing for. Remember, for BRT corridors, you always start with the service plan.
You're talking about December or January of this year?
We shall start negotiating with the Federation for Public Transport Services.
So January 2021?
2021, yes. We should start.
So that's about 3 months from now.
So that by the time we are actually finishing the project, we have already looked at the elements of financing the rolling stock and the business plan upon which the transport service contract will be based. And we have the support of the public transport operators in Nairobi. And fortunately, the same people are actually operating all over the country. So even when you go to BRT Line 1, when you go to BRT Line 3, they will be the same people. And they have a corporate mechanism in their associations where through their AGMs, annual general meetings, they can always elect new people whom they believe in, who can actually be partners with government to provide this service. The worst, which we don't want to happen, is to take away the business from our people. The business.
Actually, that's the question I wanted to find out. What is the space and the role of Matatu in all of this mix?
You know, the word Matatu is a wonderful vehicle in some areas, like going to Ogatarungai, that gives you wonderful music, has Wi-Fi, has class, and has a culture. We may not lose that.
It's called the Matatu culture.
We may not lose that in the short term, because again, if you check the corridors, we are actually developing the trunk corridors, where mobility is everything, like the traffic jam between Cray Works and the city sometimes takes 1.5 hours. If we can reduce that one to 30 minutes, is a gain of an hour. We have addressed the wood in the transport system. Later, we will move into Finder network and prescribe service standards. But for now, Matatu routes will remain. They will be reconfigured so that they're not competing with BRT service, but they will be able to service a huge feeder network. And again, the same people, we want them to be involved in the ownership of the operations of the trunk corridors. So it's a double win for the industry.
And the other question is, I mean, between you and me, we all know that, you know, some of the matatus, you know, that we use for public transport are condemned, they are roadworthy, they're not supposed to be used on any road, anywhere in the world. The kind of a system that you're talking about, the BRT, you're talking about a futuristic system, a system comparable to the ones that you would have in bigger and developed metropolis. So where is the transition? How do you ensure that you embark from a BRT, a modern futuristic BRT, into a modern futuristic matatu?
Observatory, in fact, the difference between a matatu and a BRT is just in the capacity. So what does the BRT offer? A high capacity vehicle, high occupancy vehicle. What does that translate? Economies of scale. It means instead of fueling 10 vehicles, you're fueling one. Instead of carrying 32 people, you're carrying 100. It is a more economic sense. Anybody who is getting into a matatu is an investor. There is no investor who will bypass a green patch. And investing in high occupancy vehicle is a green patch. It's not only a green patch to the pocket, it's a green patch also to the environment. It's also something that when operating on a reliable service indices has a guaranteed payment stream, because you may have negotiated a payment per kilometer of service. And that will mean you don't have to compete on the street yelling for people. You can actually get out of that industry and do farming as your bank account gets paid by the bus operating company, by the clearing house, by the works of a professional management, and any person getting to the matatu, maybe a university graduate, will be happy even to become a station manager, because again, it will be a job with dignity. It is going to transform the sense of the operations from a disorganized system into a system that is desirable, not only for human capital, but also for the real capital in terms of investment.
When do we expect to have the other lines under development?
Let me talk about line 3. We already have detailed design. In fact, a company called Rabo is already reviewing the design done 3 years ago, 2015.
And line 3, you're talking about?
We are talking about Tala, Dadora.
That is in Kangundo.
Yes. And you're talking Karioko. You're coming to the Nairobi Central Station to link the railways. And line 3 is the one now using Gong Road. And that goes past Showground. Initially terminated at Showground. We are extending it to Gong. So that is already having a detailed design between Dadora and the hospitals. Hospitals, we call them hospitals because of Kenyatta and Nairobi. And that may be going. It's only now a matter of finishing the detailed design and the financing proposals. European Union is giving us some grant on it. The European Investment Bank is the lead agency that is actually...
It will cost how much?
For that, because it is a greenfield, it was estimated to cost in excess of 40 billion.
Oh, 40 billion, sure.
Because that is not retrofitting. It is greenfield infrastructure, but also, and I think it's much more from the new estimate, but once we review that design, we'll give you a proper estimated cost, because there were areas where there were to be large compensation, but with the retrofitted design, with the reviewed design, we may actually change those costs. Remember, it was also packaged with the rolling stock, with the buses. And the bus of choice for that particular corridor was electric.
Electric buses.
Because economically, in the long term, using a life cost, cycle cost analysis, then that would have been a good rolling stock to test in these metropolis that has people in excess of 7 million.
What about the other lines?
Line 1, as I told you, is the expressway with CRBC with a commercial contract. They are packaging it in one construction cycle. With the expressway, we expect it to be completed in 2 years.
In 2 years?
Yes.
So we're talking about 2022?
2022. And then line 5, which is Outer Ring Road, you saw recently there was some kind of financing that was signed off by Koreans. That includes a traffic control center. And again, that one will be an easier project because again, it will be packaging the retrofitting of stations along the median where we have space to have some stations. The other line is Jogoo Road. We have a detailed design done in 2014. So that one, we have a few investors who are packaging it as an investment proposal, maybe as a privately initiated investment proposal under PPP law. But it's also a very ripe corridor, looking at its cross-section and its link with stations like Makadara, Donholm, and possible also integrating service with the Line 5, which is the Outer Ring Road.
Mm-hmm.
So if you check around the urban core, you can see the evacuation and the transportation services is well planned for the whole of the city.
Engineer, in the interest of time, I mean, somebody must be out there, listening to you and wondering, this sounds like a mirage, it sounds like a pipe dream. I want you to look into this camera here, and promise people that this will someday, in the not so distant future, be a reality, be on the ground, be touchable, and be feelable as well.
Thank you, O'Brien, and it's good that you are listening to us, wherever you are. I think why you pay us is actually to dream. And once we dream, we bring those dreams into pen and paper through plans. The dreaming has not started with us, has been there for a long, long time. We started with 1972 Nairobi Urban Study. We've been having several studies culminating into the study of 2014 that we call the Harmonization Study that actually have proposed the bus rapid transit corridors. The dream actually started over 100 years ago with the development of the railway was called the Lunatic Express. It's the same corridor that we want to use for commuter rail service. This is not only a dream for this generation, it's a dream for the generations that are going to come. And we want to assure you that once we start implementing the pilot project, during our generation, we want to achieve that transformation, not only to the private sector, but also in the public sector. And as we continue implementing, we shall live this dream together with you.
Very well. Engineer, we shall be calling upon you and your team to come over here occasionally to give us an update on where you are going.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored for you, O'Brien, to use this platform to be able to inform your viewers, and we're always proud of your partnership, and we actually also depend on your support in giving people information that is accurate, and we are very grateful as a ministry and also as NaMATA.
Very well, and that's why we exist as a state broadcaster.
Thank you so very much.
To give the right information.
Thank you, sir.
Asante sana. Well, we've been talking to Engineer Francis Gitau. He's the Acting Director General of Nairobi Area Metropolitan Authority, joining us here to explain to us where are we in terms of the BRT development. Line 2 or 3 actually is already underway. That is the line from Clayworks all the way to Kenyatta National Hospital. It's under construction. You need to go there, you need to see it so that you can believe that Kenya in a songa bele. My name is O'Brien Kimani. Thank you for your time. We always have these kind of discussions right here on Inside the Government. We'll see you again on Thursday as we discuss more. Have a good night.